A lot of times for men, they expected greater quantity of sex. And a lot of times for women, they expected better quality.
Possible to do both? I don't know.
It absolutely is possible to do both, but have you talked about it?
You may be one choice away from a thriving marriage. Welcome to the Operation Thriving Marriage podcast with Brian and Jennifer Harvey.
So, sweetheart, we are back at it, and I'm excited about this one again because we've got another listener question to answer.
Oh, always love those. So please continue to send those in to us.
Absolutely. So this is from Deanna, and she sent this to us, and her question is,
Hey girl, hey Deanna.
Been married 3 years. I feel more like a roommate than his wife.
Bum, bum, bum. That's tough.
That is. But first of all, Deanna, we want you to know that's actually pretty common. And so don't feel like you're the only one experiencing this. Usually around that 3 to 5 year mark, this does happen, the dreaded roommate phase in marriage. And the newness of the relationship has kind of worn off. The honeymoon phase was long over, and you've just kind of settled into these routines of life. You know, that you get up, you go to work, you come home, you have dinner, wash, rinse, repeat.
And there's something comforting about that. So I think these routines not a bad thing.
No, they're not. And sometimes, though, it does feel like in chasing work, focusing on all these other things, that home life has gotten so comfortable that you forget to work on it. You forget to focus and make positive efforts in your relationship because you've got other things that, well, more obviously require immediate attention. There's that fire you've got to put out at work. There's the home repairs that need to happen, or you're looking for, maybe you're at a place where you're having kids and now you've got to find that next home, or you're dealing with, at this point, changing diapers or potty training and all these other things that you forget to focus on your relationship.
Yeah, just adjusting into some of those other routines or different things, just these changes and transitions. And that can always be a really tough thing as well, because it's like what I'm hearing from Deanna is she's effectively feeling like I have been friend zoned in my own marriage, right?
Yeah.
And nothing funny about that, just when you're living that. But in so doing, I think some things to just keep in mind is, this is something that you and your spouse have to work on together to get out of. It doesn't mean your marriage is doomed or it was a mistake. It just means you have to be very conscious and purposeful together about it. And what's always been interesting to me is I feel like couples a lot of times will have very different perspectives on what the status of their relationship is. Because,
that's true.
Deanna, you're saying, gosh, I feel like we're just roommates. I don't know if your husband feels the same way, because he might be thinking everything's fantastic. Especially I found that if you've got somebody who is really active with work, and I'm not saying that this is him, but if he's, say, doing a lot of traveling, or he's doing a lot of positive things in work and advancing and going different places and involved with different people, say, in work, he might think everything's fantastic at home, and now I'm really getting myself immersed in positive things for my career, which in turn is positive things for the home. And he might not understand that there's even a problem. So I feel like husband, wife, just spouses, it can happen for different reasons, because I've even seen people where they get very active in volunteering at a nonprofit that's important to them, or at their church, and they think they're doing really great things, but then the other spouse is feeling very neglected because of that, and that can lead to trouble.
And so before we get into kind of some action steps on how to look at that, something else I want to bring up, though, is it's really common in that 3 to 5 year phase, what Deanna's experiencing. But for our listeners, we were talking about this a little bit with Todd, and Todd has been married longer than us. His children are out of the house now, a little farther ahead in life with us.
And you listeners, you know Todd's our producer.
Yeah.
You know, we love him. We love his wife Bev. Couldn't say enough good things about them.
He's the other member of our team here. But one of the things he was saying is his peer group, they're experiencing this now for different reasons, in that they're empty nesters and they didn't work on their marriage, or they didn't focus on it as much. They focus more on their kids, or just life is different now without the kids in the home, and they've fallen into some of the similar roommate experience as well.
And I think specifically what he was saying is there were some friends of theirs where they didn't know what to do about it.
Right.
And it was just kind of like, okay, the kids are gone. And again, this is not, Todd and Bev, but this is friends of theirs that were just saying, well, we don't know what to do about this. We're empty nesters. We spent so much time focusing on the kids, and we're going to kind of ignore the problem. And then they ignore the problem for 10 plus years, 15 plus years, and then that could potentially end in divorce. And we don't want that for them.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I think is really important for Deanna and anyone else who's in that same spot, it's going to come down ultimately to communication. But I want to talk about some of the things that you should be communicating about, because I'm sure you've heard this already, Deanna. Oh, you've just got to communicate more. And quantity of communication does not make up for quality of communication. Roommates can talk a lot and still be roommates. And so there's things that need to be focused on. And I think one of those things is really focusing on getting down to, why are you married in the first place? What is the purpose of marriage? And we talk about this in the book, that the purpose of marriage is to grow in holiness. The purpose of marriage is to experience and express the love of God. And you experience that in the intimacy between the two of you, and you express that to each other and to the world around you. And when you're not focused on the right why for your marriage, then you won't really have the best what in your marriage. So that's one of the things that to talk about is, why are we married in the first place? Why are we still married? And what do we want our marriage to be? And to be able to express, I don't just want to be someone's roommate who we just happen to split the cost of living, or we happen to get the benefits of we're married, so we're in a better financial place, and not the other things that are important in marriage.
Absolutely. And it's important to have that difficult or awkward conversation. That was our first podcast that we recorded about 2 years ago. And your relationship with your spouse is supposed to be your closest, most intimate, most positive relationship that you're going to have, aside from your relationship with Christ. So with that in mind, you should be creating a safe place where the two of you are able to talk and share, very vulnerable things, and things that might even be kind of scary to you that you wouldn't share with anybody else. And being able to talk through some of these things, and not in accusatory tones or in a negative way, but just saying, I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling neglected. It takes a lot of guts to say that, but being in that kind of a marriage situation, you should be able to have these conversations. And if you don't feel safe doing that, see what you need to do and what your husband needs to do to be able to work on that. If this is something where you need to get some therapy in place, our podcast is very much committed to removing the stigma from any kind of therapy. We want to get rid of that so that you would be able to pursue that, because that can help work through these issues to maybe get you over this kind of negative hump into a very positive, fulfilling marriage. And of course, that's what we want for you. That's what God wants for you as well. Not just you, Deanna, but of course for your husband too. So be thinking of some of those things. And let me just say, as somebody who has practiced family law, I have been involved in dozens of divorce cases, as I always say, but not my own. That's a good thing. But the divorce process is just really devastating on people. So if that can be avoided, do what you can do. And also, a divorce is a lot more expensive than going to a therapist. So, go that therapy route if that needs to happen.
Yeah. So certainly focusing on, again, why are you married? What's the purpose for marriage? The second thing that I think is important, and this is another thing we talk about often, is the unexpectations. What did you expect? What did you expect your life to be like? What did you expect your spouse to be like? What did you expect marriage to be like at 3, 5, 30, 35 years, wherever you're at? And look at those expectations, those unmet, those unvoiced, unshared, maybe unreasonable expectations, but these unmet expectations, a lot of what Deanna is experiencing right now and what Todd's friends are experiencing, like, we thought it would be different. We thought we'd have this or that. And look through, why did you think that? What is the expectation? Just be able to, and sometimes it helps to write it down and be able to say, I expected at this point my life would be this, right? And being able to look at that, and then you can start looking at, okay, why aren't these expectations being met? Did your spouse know that these were some of the things that you wanted? Does your spouse know, a lot of times the roommate phase, there is a lack of romance and intimacy and closeness. I think that's a lot of what happens. I don't feel connected the way I want to be. So what are those expectations? And then, does your spouse know that that's an expectation? Is that something that you have shared? Is that an expectation that you thought was so core? Again, the unshared expectation, these things that are so core you didn't think it was necessary. Maybe you grew up in a relationship where you observed your parents behave a certain way, and that's not the way you and your spouse behave. And you thought that just came naturally because that's what marriage is. But remember, your spouse grew up in an entirely different family, had an entirely different perspective of marriage. And so what is that expectation? Or sometimes, some of those expectations are just not reasonable. A lot of those come down to, well, I thought by now we'd be financially in this place. Well, as we're recording this, inflation is still ridiculous. It's not long after the pandemic.
And not being political about it, it just
No.
facts. It is what it is.
The economy is what it is. And economic situations, wages, whatever, maybe your expectations, especially, not making fun of our millennial and Gen Z listeners, but a lot of what we've observed is you guys thought at 3 to 5 years of marriage, you were going to have what your parents had at 20 to 30 years of marriage. And they spent a lot of time getting
financially
to that. Financially,
speaking?
yes.
Okay.
And so some of those things, like, oh, what did you expect?
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of it too is intimacy. A lot of it is, and the intimacy issues, we've got several episodes about reigniting that spark. We've got another one that we're going to be recording soon as well. But a lot of those expectations are just, I expected. And what we found, a lot of times for men, they expected greater quantity of sex. And a lot of times for women, they expected better quality.
Possible to do both? I don't know.
It absolutely is possible to do both, but have you talked about it to each other? And so that's another thing that I think is really important, is the unexpectations. That really it's easy to fall into that roommate phase because you're not addressing the expectations that you have. And then so your expectations aren't being met and you feel disconnected.
And I would say that that would, of course, go for Deanna's husband on this. It's like, where's he coming from on this as well? So
Absolutely.
that's why facilitated conversation is a good thing to do. And if you need some extra help with that, that might be the pastor at your church. That might, again, be a marriage counselor or marriage therapist. So definitely use those resources. But I think the other thing that I do want to address is some other things to just more practically get in there and actions, not just the conversations, which are, of great importance to do, but some of the actions. And longtime mentor of mine, we talk about them on the podcast pretty frequently. He's now a retired judge, and this judge was up for election in office. It's not the federal courts where you're appointed forever. You have to run for office. And he was obligated to go to a lot of different activities and dinners and events, and especially during campaign season. And his wife, fantastic woman, it was just kind of feeling like, gosh, he's out every night. And I'm not a roommate. I'm his wife. So we're going to sit down. We're going to look at the calendar together, and we're going to figure out what events can I go to with him this week, even if it's just one event, so that she'd be able to spend some extra time with him, and it's something that they're working on and doing together in those kinds of moments. And I appreciate her being so proactive and speaking up.
Yeah, it's funny because with the military, we have these mandatory fun events and we have these different things. And something that I appreciate about it, but sometimes you would get frustrated with, is the expectations for spouses to be involved with military stuff.
Depends on what it is, yeah.
But no other job do you show, well, maybe ministry, but most other jobs, if you're working at a law firm, it's not like, okay, we're going to this event and your spouse is expected to be there.
Sure, that's true.
Yeah. But the military does that because marriage is a force multiplier. Strong, healthy marriages make for a better military force. The members, they're healthier, they're more equipped.
And I'd say that's true for the church and the Christian community too, right?
Absolutely. So to June's point, it's like, okay, find those things that you can do together and get that on the calendar. No, we're going to do this event. Something else, though, that along those lines, I think, is break the routine. Mm-hmm. And so this again is the vacation. I don't understand the trend in America today to not use your paid time off. It's available to you. It's a benefit, and you need that to be able to be healthy.
It's the social pressure of the job. I think that's what it is. That's what's keeping people from taking the time off. It's that work culture. But I think that you need to be a culture breaker and help develop other culture and take that time, just because that's healthy.
Yeah. So that's another thing, is break the routine, take your vacation, go out on dates, and don't make it just, Thursday night's date night. Maybe what you need to do is, do something completely different. Surprise each other. Surprise spouses that like surprises. Jen's not crazy about surprises. I've got to be careful about that.
Uh-oh.
But
I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. It's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Yep.
But do these things to break up the routine. Be honest about, hey, have the conversation about, hey, I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling like a roommate. We're not roommates. We're spouses. And so we need to break the routine and come up with a plan together. If it's something where your spouse is more willing to, hey, you say, you wake up Saturday morning and say, get in the car, we're leaving, and that's going to be a positive thing, do that. If I did that to Jen, then she'd be very angry with me and frustrated and want to know what was going on. It wouldn't be a fun experience. So for us, it's more...
And coffee would have to be present. A lot of coffee.
And so for us, it'd be more, hey, next week I want to, and then we would plan that. But either way, breaking that routine is really going to help upset the apple cart in a positive way to break that roommate phase.
Yes, I'll be looking out for all of the message of Jen Harvey needs to relax. Cut your husband a break. All right. Waiting for those messages.
But those are the things that I think are really going to be helpful. So for Deanna or anyone else out there who's feeling more like a roommate than a spouse right now, have those conversations about the purpose of marriage. What is your purpose of being married? Have those conversations about your expectations. You know, start scheduling or start finding places where you can fit intimacy and connection into the existing schedule, and take some time to break the routine, upset the schedule in ways that are going to build those intimacy and that connection and that closeness to help you experience that love and that desire and that intimacy that God has for you.
And Deanna, we're going to be praying for you and anybody else here who can hear my voice and you're feeling like her. We're going to be praying for you as well. But take these action steps, break out of that roommate routine and funk, and find your spouse all over again. We are very excited about booking live events, and we're in process of doing that with different churches over the coming couple of ministry seasons. Please have your pastors reach out to us to book us for a live event and share this podcast with them. Thank you.
Jen and I started Operation Thriving Marriage to help couples and churches take marriages from merely surviving to thriving. We've got our book, we've got a blog, and resources for our coaching ministry, and you can bring us out for an Operation Thriving Marriage experience. For more information, go to OperationThrivingMarriage.com. That's OperationThrivingMarriage.com.